What's up, boys? In this video, I'm gonna go over how to do 3D from downloading Cinebuddy and using it, and doing element inside of After Effects. So the first step is downloading Cinebuddy. But if you already have Cinebuddy, you can just skip this part. I'm gonna have them split up into different sections on the YouTube video. So you wanna open your browser, and you wanna go to search for Bevels mod. Go to the first website, then you want to go to plugins and search for Cinematics Buddy. Click this. Now you want to make sure that both Bevels mod and Rocket League is open. I don't have Bevels mod open right now. Okay, so now that you have both Rocket League and Bevels mod open, you want to click install with Bevels mod. This is going to look a bit different depending on your browser. I use Firefox, and you can see it says success 1, which means it worked. Okay, so if the normal installation doesn't work for you, you can try going into the Bevels mod menu, pressing F2. Going into plugins, and then selecting the plugin manager beta, and then you're going to click on open plugin manager. Okay, so then you want to type 95 in this area, click install by ID, and then you got Cinematics Buddy. Okay, so for the next step, you're going to open your Bevels mod menu. This is with F2, and you click plugins, and then you click Cinematics Buddy beta, and here's your file directory, file name, and camera name. So you want to go to your desired file location. Okay, so once you're in your file location, you want to click in this empty area to the right, and then you would want to do Control-C or right-click and copy. And you want to go back into Rocket League and paste it. Okay, so what you want to do now is put a / at the end and replace every backslash in your file directory with a / like that. And you click enter, and then you go to file name. I'm going to call this Cinebuddy. You want to click enter. Also, when you do this, I'm going to call the camera just camera. Okay, so before you record your cinematic, you want to make sure that your FPS is capped to 60, or else you may get some issues with aligning the video with the Cinebuddy camera, and it might be pretty buggy. Okay, the next step is going into your replay and recording your cinematic. So I'm going to see you once the cinematic is done and ready to go. Okay, so now that I have my cinematic ready, I'm going to go into bindings. I'm going to click add here. I'm going to double click on this blue area, and I'm going to write CB start record. And then you're going to want to bind this to something on your keyboard. I'm going to select this key and then click save. Now I'm going to add another one, and I'm going to write CB stop record instead of start. Save, and then add a key. I'm going to use this, and then click save. So now that that's ready, you want to either record by clicking these two, but I like to bind it to my keyboard. And there's a specific reason for that. I'm going to show you now. Okay, so for this step, I'm going to show you how you can use OBS to make the video automatically align with the 3D camera. You can skip this step if you don't want to use OBS. So go into your OBS settings, then you want to click hotkeys, and then on start recording, you're going to bind that to something on your keyboard. I'm going to use Alt F8. I'm also going to do the same for stop recording, Alt F8. Now, since Cinebuddy uses two different bindings for starting and stopping recording, if you want to start and stop recording so that everything is aligned, you need to have two different bindings on top of this. So how I'm going to do this is that Alt F8 is recording without Cinebuddy, and I'm going to add another two keys for recording with Cinebuddy. So now I got to remember what I bound it to inside of the Bevels mod menu, and that was the right bracket and the quote. You're going to click plus on these, and I'm going to bind it to Alt and the key I'm using to start recording inside Cinebuddy. So for me, that's this key. And I'm going to bind stop recording, second key, to Alt, and the key I'm using to stop the Cinebuddy recording. So that would be Alt and this key. I'm going to click apply, and I'm ready to roll. So for this video, I'm only going to cover how to align it manually, because I know most people aren't using OBS. And if you're using OBS, it should be pretty straightforward and everything is going to be aligned automatically. So if you bound it to a key, just click those buttons now, or just click start recording and stop recording here. That's up to you. If you followed the step with OBS, you just want to click the keys for recording Cinebuddy and the video. I'm just going to cover how to align them manually. So I'm going to click the key for starting recording Cinebuddy, and then I'm going to click start recording video, and now I'm going to play. And then you want to stop recording, either we're clicking stop recording here or the one you bound inside the bindings. And if you're using OBS, you just want to click the ones that are bound to both OBS and Cinebuddy, and then it's going to be really straightforward and basically automatic. But for this video, I'm just going to cover how to do it manually. Okay, so the next step is taking the environment map screenshot. I'm going to disable your dolly camera, and then you want to open the console by clicking F6, and then you want to write in dolly cam set FOV 170. Gonna look really weird, but this is as close as we can get to an HDRI, which we're basically hoping for with this. Then you want to go to where you want your text to be. I want mine to be on the wall, so I'm gonna go like here. And then I'm gonna look the direction of the camera. Then I'm gonna take a screenshot of this. And now that you have your image, just name it something like ENV. And then we're ready to go into After Effects. Where the fuck did my video go? I'm just gonna name this RL. I'm gonna drag it into this area. I'm gonna drag this into this area right here. And now, once you're inside After Effects and you have your video ready, you wanna change your composition frame rate to 30 FPS if you don't have that already. Then you wanna click OK. Now, you wanna click File, Scripts, Run Script File. Then you wanna navigate to this file location. Okay, so to find this file directory, what you can do is click Windows key R, and then %app_data %, and then click enter. And then you want to go into box mod, then you want to go into box mod again, and then data, cinematics buddy, plugins, After Effects. And then once you're here, you just want to click in this empty area, click Ctrl C on your keyboard, go back into here, click the empty area here, click Ctrl V and enter. Then you should see the script. And then you want to open this file. If this file doesn't show up, you can try clicking here and clicking on all file formats, and then it might show for you. Now once that's done, you want to go into the file location where you got your Cinebuddy file, and then you want to double click on this. So now what you want to do is find the first frame where the video starts moving. So I soloed out this channel so I only see this, and I'm gonna skim through here and find the first frame where there's movement. That would be here. I'm gonna trim the layer to here. I'm gonna move it to the beginning of the comp, and I'm gonna hold shift so it automatically snaps to the beginning. Now I'm also gonna do the same thing with the camera. So I'm gonna go through and see the first frame where I see movement. That's here. And I'm gonna select both the camera and the ball null in case I want to use the ball null object later. And then I'm gonna trim it to there. I'm gonna hold shift and drag it to the beginning of my comp. Once that's done, then you got everything ready. Now what you want to do is create your element layer. Okay, so once you have your element layer, apply the effect element as usual. And for this, I'm gonna use text, but I'm gonna show you how to do it both with text and with the logo. I'm gonna go into element and then custom layers, custom text and masks, and then click path layer 1, and you want to select your text layer. So for me that's test, and then you can hide your text layer again, go into scene setup. Okay, now that you're inside element, click extrude, and you should get your text like this. Then set your bevel scale to something like, I think I'm gonna do 8 for this maybe. Yeah, that's nice and thick, I like it. Okay, and now I'm gonna showcase how you can do the same thing just with the logo instead of text. Okay, now that you have your logo ready, you wanna select the layer. I'm gonna click layer at the top and then auto trace. I'm gonna copy these settings, make sure that everything is the exact same. And you wanna go into your element and open custom layers, custom text and masks, and under path layer 1, you want to select your auto trace layer, and then you're going to click the source and select masks instead. Then you can hide both the image and the auto traced, and then go into scene setup in element. Okay, now that we're inside element, you want to click extrude, and it might be a bit messed up in some places, but it's not very noticeable. So I'm just going to stay with this, and then I'm going to make it nice and thick, maybe with 8 bevel scale. And now I'm going to continue with the text, but it's going to be pretty much the same for if you do it with a logo or if you do it with text. Now we're going to go over some materials. I'm probably just going to use the bevel preset for this. With this one and change it a bit. This is just whatever you find the most good looking. Just play back and forth with different bevels. It's best if you create your own one from scratch, but I'm not going to do that for this tutorial. what I'm gonna do now is add some surface imperfections, and for that I'm gonna go here and click on normal bump. I'm gonna click load texture, and then this depends on what packs you have installed already, but I'm gonna go into materials, road shaders 2, and then metal maps. I'm gonna select one of these pictures, but if you don't have this pack, you can just go on Google and search for something like surface imperfection texture. Go into here and use any of these, whichever you like. But for this one, I'm gonna use maybe this one. And as you can see, you got some imperfections now. This doesn't look great. This really depends on your scene though, so the number's gonna be really different. I'm gonna do this for all materials. Okay, so now that you have a text you're happy with, then you're gonna click on environment at the top here. And you're gonna click this area, and you're gonna navigate to where you put your environment screenshot. So this is the one. I'm gonna click OK. Now I'm gonna go into this orange material. I'm gonna scroll down and find reflectivity and glossiness, and I'm gonna find whatever I think looks the best. And I'm also gonna experiment with the normal bump and make it higher and lower depending on what I think looks better. This really depends on what your scene looks like, so what it looks like in here is probably gonna be pretty different from how it looks inside Rocket League. Okay, for the next step, I'm gonna add or create a plane. I'm gonna rotate it so it's standing up. I'm gonna make it a lot bigger. And now you want to think of this plane as the wall. So if this is the wall, then you got to think of how far you want the text away from the wall. So in my case, I want it on the wall. So something like that should be nice. Now on the plane model, I'm going to select the material. I'm going to scroll all the way down and click on matte shadow. Once that's done, you're pretty much done with the scene, but you're probably gonna have to go a lot back and forth to see whatever you think looks better. And you only need this plane if you want the shadow to be cast somewhere. If you don't want a shadow, let's say your text is flying or something, then you're not gonna need to do that. Okay, so now you wanna find the wall for this goal. Now, I'm gonna select the blue goal layer and go into position. And you see the X position is what determines the wall position. So this one is the one you want to maintain. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to go into element, group one, particle replicator, and I'm going to paste that position here. This is because I want the text to be on the wall. Now I'm going to select 0 for this, so it's right on the ground there, right centered. And I'm also going to rotate this, because you can see it's not facing the correct direction. Okay, now what you want to do is move it to the location you want it to be in, but you don't want to change the X position if you want it to stay on the wall. I'm going to make it a bit bigger. I'm going to particle look, particle size. I'm going to make it to the size I want it to be. So now you want to go into the element menu and you want to scroll all the way down to output. On super sampling, you're going to select 8. And this gives the text a much higher quality with less sharp edges, so it fits the scene much nicer. Now, to make the environment look a little nicer, I'm going to open up environment, and on the UV repeat, I'm going to write in 5 in both of these, and then look back inside here. And the reflections should get a lot more texture. I'm gonna have a pretty nice environment now. Looks nice. So now what you wanna do is go to your element layer and you're gonna scroll all the way down to render settings. I'm gonna open ambient occlusion. I'm gonna click enable AO. I'm gonna turn it up and something I think looks nice. And this both creates ambient occlusion like a shadow on the text. We also have a shadow on the wall. Since that's the center of the scene and we copied the same position from the blue goal, same X position. Okay, so before Tornado goes over custom lighting, I'm gonna go into lighting here. On add lighting, I'm gonna select something else, maybe natural. Look through whatever you think looks nice.
So here we are, and we're gonna go over lighting in After Effects for Element 3D. And I'm going to talk about front lights, rim lights, side lights, and even top lights. And to import a light into your scene, I'm going to assume you already know how to get the text in because EQ has gone over that already. But to get a light in, you just right click down here, click new, light. By default, it should be on white. Intensity just be on 100 and whatever. For the purpose of this, I'm going to name this front light because that's what I'm going to go over first. And we're going to keep it as a spotlight, and I'll go over all the differences in the lights, but I'm going to have shadows off because EQ is going to talk about shadows in a later section as well. So we have our front light, and luckily for us, it has automatically appeared right in front of the text, which is perfect. It's illuminating it. But for you in your scene, it might appear nowhere near the text, and I'll show you how to get it where you need it to. So in Element, you want to go to your Group 1 particle replicator, and your text will have whatever coordinates it has. These numbers are probably different for you. And you just want to paste that onto your light. So I'll grab this one and put it in the first slot. And then I'll grab this one and put it here. And then I'll grab this one and put it here. I just added a camera so we can move around a bit, and you can see the light is actually inside the text by doing this. So what you can then do is you can go into 4-view mode. There's all these different modes down here, and this just gives you a much better view of it. You might not be able to see your text in the frame, like if your camera position is pretty far away with Cinematics Buddy. Like if it's not in the center of the map, it might not be there. But if you're lucky, you'll be able to see it like this. And this is our camera, this pink outline here. Shows what our camera sees. We can see it here as well from the top and from the front. But right here we have our light, and all you got to do is just drag it back like this. So now it is in front of the text and it is affecting it. So that is basically what a front light is, and it just makes the front of your text look so much better. That looks very default and bland. That looks so much better. And of course, let me just make the text look a bit nicer. Ambient occlusion, as this is probably what you'll be seeing. But like, right? See, this looks a lot nicer in my opinion. And you can click A on the keyboard twice while selecting the light, and all the light settings come up. Conversely, you can also just click here, double click on that, and here you go back to the settings. But like, for instance, you can adjust the intensity if you think it's too strong, too weak, something like that. Looks pretty good. Actually, exactly where we had it. It might go a little bit less, like 80. That's nice. So we can go over the different types of lights right now. So as you can see with the light we have right now, the spotlight, what it is basically a little cone. And this cone points towards the text, and that is the radius where the light is shining out of. And if we rotate the light, you can see it kind of follows the radius as to where it's affecting. Same with if we go up and down. What if we change it to, we double click on the light icon and we change it to a point light. Point light's different. If you click R on the keyboard, you can't actually bring up the rotation. You can't rotate a point light. It kind of affects everywhere around it. It's like how an actual light bulb would work, affecting all areas around it. We also have an ambient light, and the way this works is, as you can see, way more of the object is illuminated. So yeah, ambient lights don't really have a position either. No matter where you put them, they will affect all areas of the text. You can see even the back is getting lit up. The last type of light is a parallel light. I'm not very experienced with these. I'm not sure what they do, but they don't seem to have too much use in Rocket League. I typically stick to spotlights so you get a nice full off around the edges. So the next type of light we want to go over is what we call a rim light, and we'll do the same method to create the light. We'll keep it as a spotlight as well, and I'll just name it rim light. And for the sake of this, I'm just going to copy the position of the front light, which we've already gone over. The purpose of a rim light is to go behind the text. So that's where our front one is. We want the rim light to go behind it. And to do that, we can use the four view mode and make sure we're on the move tool, which is V, and simply just drag it like that. But now, since it's a spotlight, it's facing the wrong way. If it was a point light, it wouldn't matter. But all we're going to do is rotate this, and we're going to rotate it at 180. So what has this actually done? Let's toggle on and off. You can see now there's a bit of light coming from behind. This is really great if you're trying to separate your text from the background or whatever. It just looks really good. It makes the text look a bit more realistic as well, instead of being just completely dark towards the back, which in Rocket League, the lighting, nothing's really that flat. There's kind of lights coming from many directions, so it just looks a lot better typically. In my opinion, that looks so much better, especially around like here. Look how much nicer that looks. The next type of light we want to go over is side lights. So again, I'm just going to duplicate the rim light and rename it to left light. And we're going to do the same for the right light in a second. So these lights obviously go on the left and right of your text. And all we have to do, we'll go back into 4 view mode, and we'll bring the light back to the center of the text, and we'll move it to the left. And again, we'll go into the rotation, and we'll adjust this to 90. And what does this do? This lights up the left side of the text a little bit. What you can see is, in our case, it's a bit strong, so we'll just turn down the intensity. And in this case, you don't even really need it, but I'm just teaching you how to use it in general because it's quite useful. And often having lights coming from all 4 directions, including the right light, which I'll set up real quick. So here we have our right light. Just changing the direction it's facing and putting it on the left side of the text. So obviously this is too bright, but depending on your scene and your environment, it might fit. But I'm just showing you all the different types of lights you can use. You can even put a light on top of the text shining down onto it. That might fit your scene, but often like a 4-point lighting setup like this is quite ideal to illuminate your text, and it looks really clean in actual scenes. So I definitely recommend it, and especially the front light and the rim light is very helpful as well.
I'm going to take the lights Tornado made and I'm going to put them into my scene. I'm going to create a null to find out where the position of the 3D text is in the scene. I'm going to copy the positions. Now we got a null object right here, so we know where it is. I'm going to copy the position for the 3D text onto all these lights and on the point of interest for them. We don't want the rim light for this because there's nothing behind it. And then front light. Oh yes! Make it a bit lower maybe. Yeah, let's place it here. I'm gonna offset the position a bit, the height, so it doesn't get reflected back.
Alright, so back here, we're going to go over animation. And the 2 key parts of animation with Element 3D is multi-object animation and the animation engine. So first, I'm going to go over multi-object. To find multi-object, all you have to do is go into group 1 and then particle look and then multi-object. You got to enable it and you'll see nothing changes, but a bunch of new settings pop up. So what multi-object does is it splits each letter up individually. So you can rotate each letter just like that by itself. Or you can randomly rotate each letter by itself. You can displace each letter by itself. I guess these are not working. There you go. Like that. You can scatter them all randomly. And otherwise, like if you have this disabled, or you just do normal rotation, obviously all the letters stay together. And that's where multi-object comes in to get these individual letter animations. And a very common one people do is they'll put the random up to something like that, a keyframe, they'll skip forward a bit, and they'll set it back to 0. That's quite a common animation. People might even displace the text like this and set it back to 0. Things like this are quite common. They do look good when executed well. A tip for this is obviously you got to use the graph editor. So you select your keyframes. I open them up by clicking U on the keyboard. You select them all and you click F9. And now they've turned into eased keyframes. And let's select for the rotation. We'll go into the graph editor. And a common graph to ease it out would just be something like this. As you can see, we'll do the same for the X displacement. And as you can see, it eases out very smoothly now. And you got to experiment with the length of your animation. That's obviously too quick. You especially got to bear in mind that the composition your text is in will likely be time remapped a lot faster than it is if you're recording in like 10% speed. So keep in mind that this is not too sharp and that it's not too quick. So there we go. That's multi-object animation, basically. Of course, you can experiment with all the different sliders and whatnot and get your own personal look. These are just some of the common ones. Another common one would maybe be scatter. You can scatter up and down with the Y, like that, and set it back to default. Just remember to easy ease the graph at all times and always monitor the speed of the animation. So now that we have our multi-object all set up, I'm just gonna actually delete everything like that. And we're gonna talk about animation engine now. So you've got to ensure that multi-object is still enabled, still turned on. And that's so animation engine will work. When we enable this, you might be a bit overwhelmed, but there's really not too much. To understand it, what you want to do is play around with the animation, and you can see the text is kind of moving backwards. And you're probably confused, why is it moving in this direction in particular? And that's because the start group, which is group 1, where our text is the group that is being affected. As you can see, it's being affected. And group 2 is this group, and it uses the position from that to determine where the animation will come from. So if we set this animation to halfway through and we head into group 2, we can change the position in the particle replicator. And when we change it, this is the y-axis, we're moving it down. The animation moves down with it. We move the x-axis left and right, it moves with it. We move the z-axis back or forth, it moves with it. So for instance, we can get one where the text flies in from the sky. And we can also set the x way further back, like that. And now, when we set our animation to 100%, I see that's not going off the screen, so I'm just gonna raise it a bit, like that. Set our animation to 100%, bring it back down to 0% to complete the animation. You can see what's happening. It's flying in like that. And you can experiment with all different types of angles. You can bring this, maybe you want to make that negative, so it actually flies in from close to the camera. Right, maybe you want it to just fly straight down. Maybe you want it to come a little bit from that way. I think that's way too far, but you do get the point of what you can do with this thing. That's how you see many examples of text flying in and out in montages. I've done it a lot, so have many other editors. And one thing to keep in mind is the smoothness. If the smoothness is down to 0, what is it? If the smoothness is at 100, the text moves as a block. It's almost like multi-object is not on. But if the smoothness is at 0, they will move as individually as possible, like one at a time. So I think like 50% is quite nice, because then they kind of move more together. Just somewhere in the middle is pretty nice, like that. I think that looks a lot better. But obviously it depends on your scene, your scenario, etc. And we also have the randomness, so if you turn that up, they kind of fly in from more random directions, which can be nice depending on what you're going for. Now for this case, I'll just leave it on like 50 or something. And you can experiment with many of these other things down here. You can set it to backwards so it actually animates like out, but I won't do that. You can change the animation type from directional, I should have mentioned this earlier, from directional to radial. What this does is it kind of animates in a circular motion around whatever point you choose. It's kind of more circular in a way. Again, it depends on what you're going for. You can also go for completely random, which is kind of like just turning the randomness up. You can go for uniform, where they just all go together, and experimenting with that and the smoothness really gets some cool results sometimes. I don't do it often, but this looks like it could definitely work. And again, shape order, this kind of goes in the order of the shape, so from left to right, object 1, object 2, etc. goes in order. And I'm just going to put it back on directional, and here we have ease. What I often do is ease in, which makes the animation end a lot smoother. You can see if we do ease out, they slam in. It's really bad, but if we do ease in, it's almost like they stop way more smoothly, and if it's off, it just looks really bad. Terrible, like really unsmooth. Doesn't look good at all, so I definitely recommend doing ease in. It's better than the default ease as well. That's not bad, but ease in is definitely much better, especially when the animation's a bit slower. You can really kind of see it take effect.
So now I'm going to go over color matching and contrast matching. There are a lot of different ways you can do this. There's a bunch of color matcher plugins. You can do it manually with tint and etc. I'm going to apply the effect called tint. You could just do what most people do and click this and then find a dark spot in the scene and do the same with the bright. Just click this and then with here, maybe make it a bit brighter. And then just play with the amount. But for this video, I'm gonna also show how to do it with expressions. So in the description of this video, you can find 2 expressions you need for this. And you want to copy the first expression. And once you've done that, you want to alt click on map black to, and then click Control V on your keyboard. And then you want to go to the second expression in the description, copy that. You want to alt click on the map white to, and then click Control V. And for this to work, you want to put the name of your Rocket League layer. For me, this is just RL. And then you want to put that inside of these quotes. And if your Rocket League layer is named something else, you just want to put that inside of the quotes instead. And then you got the average white value and the average black value from your scene. Now set this amount to something pretty low, like 25 maybe. And there's a bunch of different stuff you can do as well. The ambient occlusion on this is pretty high, so it looks really dark. So I think I'm going to probably do something like 35. Or I might even do curves. This is just playing around with whatever you think looks better. And now I'm gonna apply lens blur. Rocket League doesn't really have noise, so you won't need noise in most cases. Put the iris scale to something like 0.3 maybe. The texture is so bad. I think that's it, boys. Okay, so now the next thing I'm gonna do is add CC. Don't tell Tornado I'm using a CC, by the way. Shh. Shh. Be quiet. Gonna add a bit of diffusion. See, the diffusion makes it go in. Oh, that looks so nice. The blending just instantly 37 times better. Okay, so now I'm gonna animate the or keyframe the iris scale, aka the blur amount. And let's start it at 0.5 and then decrease it to 0.4. Around here. And then back to 0.5. This distance. Alright, so now I'm gonna go over how to get star particles in your scene. So first off, I'm gonna create my solid. I'm gonna call this particular. Then I'm gonna add the effect particular. So what I'm gonna do now is open the emitter settings. I'm gonna change the emitter behavior from continuous to explode. And then I'm gonna change the emitter type from point to box. Okay, so I only want the stars inside of the map. So I need the correct values for the positions and the emitter size. To find those, I'm gonna go to the guide linked in the description. This was made by Rustic and it was revamped by Aku. I'm gonna go to useful links and community guides and I'm gonna select all important game values. And using this, you can position anything pretty easily in the scene. Okay, so I think the conversion ratio from these values into After Effects is 2.54. Keep that in mind when using these. But I'm gonna show you how to get a perfect box emitter inside of the map. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now is put in the correct position values. So that's gonna be 0 and minus 2560. And that's 0, which means it's gonna be in the center of the map and center also in height. So it's gonna be center x-axis, center y-axis, and center z-axis. I'm gonna go to the emitter size and I'm gonna change from XYZ length to individual. I'm gonna put in these values, which are 26,000. And then I'm gonna put in 5,100. And then for the Z, I'm gonna put 20,000. But note that these values are rounded off from the actual exact numbers. Okay, so now I'm gonna set all the velocity values to 0 because I don't want any of the stars to be moving. Now I'm gonna go into the particle master. In size, I'm gonna put 3 for this. This varies anywhere from 1 to 5, should be good. I'm gonna set the life to 1,000 because I don't want the particles to disappear. And the sphere feather can be in 50. This depends on what look you want, but I'm gonna keep it on 50. And now I'm gonna put the particles per second to 200,000. Now, how the emitter behavior works is that when it's set to explode, it's gonna emit 200,000 particles for 1 frame at the start of your comp, and then there won't be coming any particles anymore from that point in time. Alright, so what I'm gonna do now is add the effect curves. Then I'm gonna change from RGB to alpha. I'm gonna drag this over here. What this does is it brings the kind of transparent values to be more visible, to be less transparent. Now I'm gonna add deep glow. I'm gonna set the radius to 1,000. I'm going to set the exposure to maybe 0.3. I'm gonna turn on unmult. And I'm gonna change the exposure and radius however I think looks better. There's a bunch of different ways you can do particular. Then you want to set the threshold to 0. So the threshold smooth to 0. And then you should have a pretty good look. These settings are very generalized. It should work basically anywhere inside of the field. It really depends. There's a bunch of different combinations that can look good. This is just one way to do it, but this looks pretty nice. Alright, so now I'm going to show you how to use multiple cinematics for the exact same 3D scene. So what you want to do is follow the same method that I showed earlier in the video and record another cinematic with video and Cinebuddy like normally, and then I'll see you once that's done. Alright, so now that you have your second cinematic and second angle going, if you want that, I'm just going to import my second video. I named this RL2 right here. Now, since I trimmed my composition length, I'm going to click composition settings. I'm going to increase the length to like 30 now. And then what I'm going to do is drag RL2. Here is better. I'm just going to find the first frame it starts moving like I did previously. I hold shift so it snaps here again. Now I'm going to do file, scripts, run script file. I'm going to select this. Now I'm gonna find the second cinematics buddy file. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now is select all of these and drag them over here, holding shift so it aligns. Then I'm gonna find the first frame where it starts moving. I'm gonna hide the Rocket League layer for now. And this is the first frame with movement. So I'm gonna select the camera and the ball null object, move it there. Now, actually, all of these, they're not keyframed, so if you want to continue with the same things in the comp, I can just delete these because I already have all the values, so they're not really necessary at all. So once I've trimmed the ball position and the camera, I'm going to drag it to the beginning here and hold shift so it aligns perfectly. Now I'm going to unhide the Rocket League layer. Now what I'm going to do is put the CC on top because I want that over everything, extend that. And in particular, it's going to be the exact same. So I'm just going to put this over here for some organization. And then I'm going to extend that as well. And now the particles are actually in the exact same spot as the other scene. They're all the same. And I'm going to do the same thing with the element. See, that is also perfectly in the scene right now, in the same position. But the lights are not there. So I'm going to select all the lights and extend them out as well. Now the lights are the same. Okay, so once you extend out the element layer between the two different cameras, you want to split it right when you change cameras. And you want to make sure that the layer name is the correct one. So for me, this is RL2 and RL2 here as well, for both the black and the white. And this is why this expression is so great, because it actually takes all the average color values, so it's basically automatic. Okay, so something pretty useful you should know about Cinebuddy is that no matter where you record the path, it's always going to be the same values for every single position on the map. So by doing what I showed you earlier in the video, you can see that by just importing the other camera and aligning it, it's perfectly in the exact same spot as it was from the other one without having to reposition anything, because Cinebuddy values are consistent always. Alright, so that's it. Thanks for watching, and a big thanks to Tornado for helping out with this. And a special thanks to Cinderblock and Meatshos for helping out. They'll all be linked in the description below.